Hello there, my name's Phil Williams and I would like to welcome you to Audio Angling, the podcast site for fishing, films and facts.co.uk. Sea angling and commercial fishing are like two opposing ends of a very long bar magnet. Between them there is an extensive shared resource, in this case the fish, but shared from two diametrically opposing poles and with not a lot of real common ground between the two. That said, there is without doubt a genuine fascination amongst sea anglers, and it seems the public at large for TV programmes such as Deadliest Catch, Trawlerman and Swords on the Line. People can't help but admire the work ethic, endurance and hardiness of commercial fishermen, particularly those working for many hours on end in some of the worst and most dangerous conditions imaginable well offshore. For many years I wanted to do one of the 21-day trips in the depths of winter up to Iceland, but was unable to because of work and family commitments. Now, unfortunately, 35 years on from the notorious Cod Wars, which were finally brought to a conclusion back in the 1970s, marking the end of Fleetwood as a fishing port, the Icelandic run specifically, and distant water trawling generally, are no longer a possibility, which even as a sea angler I still find quite sad. That said, I can now offer the next best thing in the form of an interview with veteran distant water trawlerman Dick Farrer. Now I know that the way things were done when you first started was to go in at the bottom, and if you were good enough, work your way through to the top, which is what you did. So tell us a bit about how and when it all started for you.
1937, I left school and started in the fishing industry. I come from a fishing family and my father was a skipper fishing, and of course when I left school at 14 I went straight away into apprenticeship with Dynas Steam Trawling Company, and those are the people I was with right up till the war started. And then of course I progressed from there as an apprentice to a deckhand, then through deckhand and throughout. Of course I did 3.5 years in the service during the war. Then when I came back to the fishing industry, I started again as deckhand, boatswain, and slowly worked my way up till I got my ticket as a second hand, or if you will, a mate. And then from there, after a certain period of time serving as mate, I then went on to get my skipper's ticket, and then carried on from there as a skipper and mate throughout the years, till finally at the end I was retired. When the fishing industry, well, before I retired the fishing industry had collapsed, and then of course there was nothing else to do apart from which majority of the people, the fishing people did, was to go into the oil rig standby business, where we went aboard. The trawlers were turned into oil rig standby vessels for safety reasons, and then we carried on there in those ships right up till I was finally forced to retire through age limitations like.
Was this inshore fishing aboard the smaller boats, or did you go straight offshore?
No, I went straight off in the larger boats. It wasn't till later on in my career that I went in the small ships. In certain periods of time, like I was in the small boat, in the inshore fishing industry, and then back again into the big ones again.
And these bigger boats, I presume, were distant water trawlers working up around Iceland?
Yes, well, majority of the time at Iceland. I did spend time in the bigger ships, also fishing the home waters of Scotland, from the west coast of Scotland.
Now these distant water trips, I take it, on average would be for around 21 days, regardless of season or weather conditions.
Yeah, it was approximately 21, 22 days we used to work, and depending on the amount of fish you caught, sometimes you could do in the summertime when there was quite a lot of fish about, you could do a short trips. Well, on the east side of Iceland, I was in a ship called the Way of Mariner. She was about the biggest ship in Fleetwood. And I was mating that ship with a chap called Percy Bedford. And she was the top ship in Fleetwood Iceland fishing for quite a few years. And she used to run the east side of Iceland, which, of course, is a shorter distance. she did quite a lot of short trips. And I was also in another ship, the Moretta, and she was one of the top earning trawlers. The chap called Sid Christie. I was mate with him, and she was a very, very quick trip she did. She was doing anywhere around 16, 17-day trips compared to the longer trips. Mind you, the longest trips was usually from the west coast of Iceland, because you have a longer steaming period of getting there and getting back, like, to, like, leaving and coming back to Fleetwood, like. And, of course, at the east side you had a shorter steaming period, maybe a day and a half less each way. So, at times, especially in summertime, you could get quite a few short trips from the east side. But the majority of trips, the long trips, were from the west side. And then in the winter time, it was usually all long trips, like 22. I mean, and you could get anywhere, sometimes as much as 24, 25 days.
So what, typically, were the running times like?
Well, the west side of Iceland was approximately 4 days, 4.5 days. The east side, it'd be 3.5, depending which part you went, like. The nearest part would be about 3 days.
And how did you spend your travelling time? Would there be work to do, or was it an opportunity to relax before being stuck out in all weathers day and night on the deck for a fortnight or more?
Well, the majority of the crew were in watches, but you had what they call a dayman, and there'd be 3 or 4 of the deckhands, and there was apart from what they needed, the amount they needed for the watches, and they would work, well, you get the name dayman, they would work throughout the day, from breakfast time in the morning, say 6:30, 7 o'clock, till night time, till the tea time, 6:30, 7 o'clock. And they would work fixing the nets and all depending, because usually you used to work a brand new net each trip at Iceland. When you'd coming home, you would get rid of the old net, because naturally it'd be patched up and worn out, like, you know, depending on the grounds you'd work. And you would get rid of that. And coming out of dock, the dayman and that they would be working on a new trawl, fixing it up, putting it alongside, all ready for shooting, like, you know, when you got down to the ground.
Give us a taste of what it was like on a 1940s distant water trawler in terms of accommodation, food and safety, compared to how it eventually became towards the end of your fishing career.
Oh, there's quite a vast change, like, but the thing was, the actual conditions never changed. The ships themselves changed, the sleeping accommodation and the washing accommodation, eating accommodation, that all changed. But the actual conditions, working conditions, were still the same. They never changed. Apart from that in the latter days, toward the latter end, he started working what they call the watch below, when he was actually fishing. And that meant you could do up to 18 hours a day on the deck out of the 24, but you was guaranteed 6 hours out of the 24 below at rest. But you could be 18 hours at a stretch if you was needed, like, depending on the amount of fish you was catching, or if you was working rough ground and getting the net busted up and that, like, you know.
And when you were out there working on the deck, it will be extremely long hours spent cold, wet and miserable.
Oh, yeah. It was very bad on the deck, because the majority, it was only in the latter days when the big stern trawlers come out that the conditions changed, because in the normal, what they used to call them sidewinders, and what that meant was that you wore the net from the side, so that you was never getting away from the wind and the weather, and to all the net so that it wouldn't go underneath the ship and foul the propeller or anything like that. You had to be on the weather side, and that meant that the wind and the waves were coming on that side all the time as you was bringing that net on board. And once you stopped the vessel, you just laid there broadside, and you was wallowing in the water depending on the way the weather was, while you was bringing the net back aboard and putting it over till you got it down below again.
Presumably then, people will be regularly bruised and battered, But were there also more serious injuries too?
Oh, quite a lot of injuries, yeah. I mean, quite a lot of the ex-fishermen will see with little bits, I mean, same as a finger missing and all that kind of business, you know, through different the way, because there was no, in those days, there were no safety precautions on the trawler.
So what happened if someone got really seriously injured then?
Well, you just ran for the nearest port. Ran for whatever port was the nearest port, you used to run in straight away for a doctor, like, and for the hospital. Just minor wounds, like, you know, stitching business and that kind of business, cuts and bruises. Well, the skipper was supposed to do that, like, and the mate when you got your tickets, you went through a first aid course, just an ordinary first aid course, like, you know.
And what about if someone just went down sick without any outward signs of injury?
Well, we often used to say, there was a saying that the skipper used to turn around and say, when a bloke was bad and he turned around and he finished up, he died, he turned around and said, oh, I didn't know he was that bad. But it was like that, but it was until he was actually falling down, you know. He used to keep going till that, and then you used to have to take them in then again, the same as with an injury, you know, bad injury, like. In fact, I was in a ship where a lad had his leg took off right from above the knee, like. The ship called the Red Plume, and he had his leg took off in the trawl wires as they were running through the bollards, even the netting. And he had his leg took off, and we had to run him into a place called Iceland in Iceland, like.
Wouldn't he have been in danger of losing so much blood that he might actually die before you could put him ashore?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was bad to do that. But he got alright, but I don't think it was ever the same, that chap, you know.
Sickness and injuries apart, it must still have been a cold, wet, miserable job on account of the poor quality of the protective clothing back then.
Oh, yeah. Originally you started off with what we call the old oilskins, you know, and they was made of like this coated canvas, if you will, and waterproof, you know, and they were like a big frock, which fitted over you, and an oilskin, what they call a sou'wester, over your head, and tied down tight. But as the time progressed and they modernised, they started getting what they call the sea net gear. And that was what all the small sea net boats were. And that was long oilskin trousers and little sea boots. And they was tight at the bottom round the little sea boot. And then you got a smock, an oilskin smock over, with a hood, with a fixed hood, like, you know, and drawstrings, and that was drawn tight. And of course, you could move a lot better, and also, there's a lot more, you didn't get wet as much as you did with the old oilskin, you know, because in the olden days, when it used to be fishing in real bad weather, and some of the skippers used to do and all, and you get a wave coming aboard, bouncing aboard and bouncing as you were laid all in. It used to hit the deck and bounce up, so it used to bounce up under the oilskins, you know, and you'd be wet through, but you never went off the deck till that net was back down below.
Did you never lose anybody overboard from the deck in heavy seas?
Oh, yeah, there's quite a few. Quite a few have been lost throughout the years, like, you know, different times, and in different ways, like, you know.
Did nobody wear life jackets when working out on the deck back then?
No, you never did in my day. They have to do now, by the way, but never in my day. You never wore a life jacket. It got in the way, that.
So if you ended up in the water, that was it?
Oh, yeah, that was it. They didn't get many back once they went over the side.
Big gambles for potentially big profits. So what were fish stocks actually like back then? Presumably a whole lot better than they are today.
Oh, it used to. Especially in the seasons, you know, in the summertime. It used to be full of fish. And yeah, that's where you used to spend the time on deck, you know. You could do 18 hours. I mean, but I've been at town before they started I watched below. Handsome men on deck, 48 hours and 3 days on the deck without sleep. Just getting your meals. Men falling asleep in the meals, you know. And it seemed having a cigarette, you know, and they're that tired and that asleep, they sat there till it burnt their hands and they woke up, you know. It was a bad industry out there.
And not always very well paid either, despite the conditions, the risks and the hours, I take it.
Oh, no. I mean, it all depended on what the catch made, because it was all, what is it, with those people ashore, you know, I mean, they had the saying, whatever the catch made. And that was the trouble. When you got all the fish, all these big amounts of fish, that brought the market down like that. See, and you come in dock, and of course you'd all come in dock landing big loads of fish, and of course the market would be right down. And I mean, you could go in debt, you know, you go down to the office and in debt and get a sub from the next trip, whatever you made the next trip like. I mean, you could be in debt going to see the next trip. It was a bad industry, it was.
What kind of fish were you mainly looking for to get a good payday, or as you said, to clear any existing debts?
Well, majority of what they did at Iceland was cod and haddocks, but it was cod on the east side, but on the west side it was all quality fish, plaice and lemon soles and halibut, and but mostly plaice and haddocks like. But in the winter time, especially from Christmas, around Christmas time and that, it used to be the time for the plaice, like, you know, the flats. We used to say, and used to get quite a lot of flats there. And of course that was the quality fish, and used to make good money then, like, on them, like. And mind, you only caught so much of them, like, you know, but used to get a good price for them. The flats was the best fish to catch. Haddocks was next, and then cod. But cod, see, the cod, you got the quantity. Whereas with the others, it was the quality, you know. Although sometimes you could get a lot of haddocks, you know, depending on what ground you was on and the time of the year. But majority of the time, it was the cod because, as I say, they was in the bigger quantity.
Depending on whether you wanted either quality or quantity, what kind of ground would you be looking to fish, and at what sort of depth?
Well, on the west side, it was then anywhere around, it was in shoal depths, it was then around 40, 50, 60 fathom. Mind you could go off what we used to call go off the side, and that used to be off the 100 fathom line, like deep water. You could get cod and redfish off there, like. But on the east side, you used to be working a lot deeper water on the east side, and anywhere around 80, 100, 120, 150 fathom. And at times when they used to go on the what was that bank called? There used to be a bank as you got in towards Iceland, you know, and used to get the redfish on it, what they call the burgos, and that was in about 220 fathom, that. But that was all you got there, like.
And what about the ground itself?
Oh, well, west side was very rough ground. You know, on the west side you worked all these big, heavy iron bobbins, steel bobbins, you know, on the bottom of the net, like. And they were up to 22 inch in diameter, you know, but on the east side you work a smaller, steel bobbins, like, but a smaller diameter, like, you know, 18 and 20 inch, like. It wouldn't be the same hard ground as what it was on the west side. It was all hard ground on the west side.
So with less in the way of navigational aids and sophisticated electronics than today to rely on, how did you locate your towing runs, particularly in bad weather when visibility was low?
You worked from the land, all the headlands and that, and you worked little lighthouses and that, where, you know, different points of land, how they merged into the background of the lighthouse. Because you're talking about, in the olden days, you're talking about a 3-mile limit, see? You could see these places, whereas when they started working the Cod Wars and that, and you was working 20 and 30 mile off, you wouldn't have been able to work those marks then, because you had all the electronics then, like. your radars and that. But in the olden days, there was all these marks.
As good as it was, more fish would presumably mean more frequent hauling of the nets day and night, with less time for sleep or rest in between tours.
Depending on the fishing, it could be 2 hours, 2.5 hours, but if the fishing was just normal and you won't get a lot of fish, it would be about 3 hours. About 3 hours. That's at Iceland, usually about 3 hours. But I have been, especially in that ship I told you about, the Beretta, I have seen us all every 20 minutes. There was that much fish there at the place called the East Orange at the east side of Iceland. There was that much fish there, was all in every 20 minutes. And the net was just four or five lifts, you know, taken out of the net, a cod. There was that much fish.
So we've looked at how hard life could be back then on the deck, but just as hard in a different way as a skipper up there in the wheelhouse. They're responsible for everyone in terms of safety and earnings, plus of course the well-being of the boat.
Oh, well, yeah. That's where the stress comes in. And they talk about stress nowadays, they don't know what stress is. They don't know what stress is when they're in ships like that, especially you get in a ship on the west side of Iceland, a force 10 or 11 gale, severe, and your radar goes, and you're trying to dodge into the land, and you don't know where you are, and it's an howling snowstorm, and you're dodging in, and you have the sounder on, and you're shoaling up, and you don't know how far in, because you can get in at a place called Stalberg Corner, and you can get in, and you can be 40, 50 fathom, and it's rising straight up like that, you know. And you talk about stress.
But you either couldn't or wouldn't always find shelter to tuck into in bad weather. Then I suppose you would just have to ride the sea until it settled out sufficiently to get back to work.
Oh yeah, you used to pull the gear aboard and drop the doors in, lash all the gear up, heave it all tight, you know, and then set the watches, and then you just used to dodge away head to wind all the time. And you would lay and then drift the way back. Because when it got too bad, you just kept on going head to wind. Didn't matter where you got to, like, you just kept on. Because naturally you didn't move very far, like, just going up head to wind.
Worse still, what about the boat getting iced up?
Oh, well, that was a regular occurrence. And of course, once you got to that stage, you had to get all hands out with iron bars and what we used to call battens, what they used to wedge the hatches up with, the hatch covered up with these, and axes, little axes, you know. And you used to go around knocking all the ice off and shoveling it over, like.
But what about higher up on the masts and rigging?
Oh, well, they had to go so far, like, you know.
Was the big worry then of becoming top-heavy and capsizing?
Oh, yeah. There was about 3 ships happened like that years ago out of all. The Lorella, the Rodrigo, and there's another one, I think. I forget what that one was called. But the Lorella, the Rodrigo, they just kept on going and going. Weather was that bad they couldn't turn round. And they was just dodging away, and they couldn't stop. It was that bad, and the weather was that bad, that they just couldn't stop, and they couldn't let anybody go on the deck to bang the ice away, and just till they slowly turned over with the weight of the ice.
Am I right in thinking that you could also steam the ice off as well?
Yeah, but they didn't. They never got onto that because, see, as time progressed, you went to diesel, and you had no steam. See, all the ships were diesel in the end, and you had no steam. They only had a little boiler for washing and all that business, like, you know. There was really no steam for use in regard to that bit of business. They did try at one time the electric pads, electric heaters. The ship called the Boston, what was that ship? Who was it used to be in, Frank? Bill, they tried these pads on the front of the ship, on the front of the wheelhouse. They tried them to see how they go by electric heaters, you know. Heaters his own pad. It didn't seem to catch on. It didn't seem to to work much by it, because they never seemed to progress on it, like.
And did you have any near misses yourself with either ice or bad weather?
Oh, once or twice. In fact, I picked up to, I rescued a ship in Morecambe Bay. When I was in these smaller ships, the inshore boats, the ship called the Steffel, he was floating around with the gear with his net in the screw, in the propeller, and he couldn't get, that was in about a force 8 southwest gale. And we went to pick him up. I was in a ship what used to work for Ward's firm. My father was the ship's husband of it. And the Craig Miller, a little ship, that little bow ship called the Craig, 80 foot, you know. It was dodging going into Ramsey for shelter. And my father come on the VHF and called us up and he said, "Where are you?" And I told him, and he said, "Well, can you get back down to so-and-so, I'll give you the position." I said, "Yeah." And he said, "The ship's in distress." And we turned round down the window and we went down and picked him up. But we couldn't, we had about 6 or 7 goes at towing him, and we parted. The warps wasn't strong enough in the end, you know, we parted the wire every time. We just had to take his crew off in the end. We had to let him, and he went ashore off Barra there. And in the end, he was a wreck, like, you know, in the end.
Tell us a bit now about the differences in working conditions when the switch was made from sidewinders to the more modern stern trawlers. Presumably, life became a whole lot more comfortable and safer as a result.
Far safer. And mind you, personally, I never went in the big stern trawlers. I'd retired before that, like. I never went in the big stern trawlers. All the time I was in the sidewinders. But it was a vast change it was for the crew, because you're working under cover in those ships. You're all in the net on the deck, but you're not all in the net sideways, you know. That net's coming up the stern, up the ramp, and you're not getting that water flying over you and that, like, you know, as they're working on the deck. And what happens, the fishes all drop down below. So you're under cover, and you're gutting and cleaning the fish under cover. You're not working on the deck all the time like the old-timers were in the sidewinders. I mean, and the net's still going, but in the sidewinders, you're on the deck whatever the weather is, working and cleaning and gutting the fish, you know.
Just a thought, how did he go on for ice during the summer months when the first fish coming aboard might be 18 days away from going onto a fishmonger's slab?
Oh, well, you had a certain amount of ice you used to carry, depending on the size of the ship. You could carry 40, 50 ton of ice. You know, that was put aboard in the dock before you sailed. That was one of the jobs when he was working in the fish room, where somebody had to chop that ice, you know, because it all used to freeze solid when they put it aboard, like in your different pounds, as they call them, the compartments. And of course, you used to have to chop that. And that was one of the brass's part, the apprentice's job, like, you know.
And would that amount of ice last you for a full trip?
Oh, yeah. And in fact, that's where your meat used to be and all, in those days, before they got the fridges. That used to be the first job they used to do, the dayman. The first day out of dock, they used to go down and chop a hole in the middle of the ice and bury all the meat in it. You know, and all handy for them to take one joint out at a time each day. Of course, when you got the last day at the end of the trip, it used to be a bit very coloured, you know. You used to have little green streaks in there, you know.
So prior to the Cod Wars, Fleetwood was a busy, bustling port.
It was marvellous, it was. When I'm thinking, I'm talking only these days, you know, the other day I was talking about how it used to be. They're closing all the pubs down. There's hardly a pub that's open now. And somebody was telling me they were closing another couple down at the end. And they used to be, even through the week, they used to be bustling with life as the men landed, and each different day, and they're coming off the dock and get the wives, or sometimes they didn't get the wives, and into the pub you know, straight into the pub and here we go. And it was marvellous, it was, but when you go and people like me at my age, you walk around and it's a ghost town.
I remember driving over to Fleetwood early mornings back in the 1970s to see what the distant water boats were bringing ashore, and there would be boats still lining up outside waiting for a berth. That's how busy it was back then. But sadly, now the fish quay is almost derelict.
At one time, they used to give them a number at the end. Of course, the lighthouse was on the go then, wire light like before it got burnt down. And they used to hoist a ball upon it. And everybody used to be down telegraph, full speed, and they all used to be going for the first berth, all flying at fairway by. They all used to be dodging round and dropping round like that, ready to go as the ball went up. And they used to be jostling one another going down the channel, bump, bump, you know. They used to do more damage going around the trouble getting in dock than they did with all the weather.
When you were working up around Iceland, particularly in the deeper water, I suppose you'd also bring up unusual, unidentified species of fish.
Oh, you could do, but you didn't unless you was off the side in the deep water. Normally, you didn't catch anything like that in the shallow water, the 40, 50 fathom like. It was when it was in the deep water, but the place where you used to catch the weird fish, it was up the northwest of Scotland, off St Kilda's and places like that, out in the deep water, when they used to go out 200 and odd fathom, you know, that's when they used to catch the funny fish. Oh, when they used to call these, of course you wouldn't say that nowadays, the darky Charlies.
Yeah.
these fish, because it was black like, you know, and that was ratfish, and they had big teeth, just like human teeth they had. Rats and a big spike on the back, only about that, on a big whip tail, you know. And they used to be in that deep water, and they used to go off there at night time, sometime, and all you used to get was, you might get a box, and something like that for a 3 or 4 hour tour. And all you got was about a box and all big, as we used to call them, granddaddy ache, big grandfather ache. And that's all you used to get. But that's when you used to get these funny fish like, you know. And in the dark, and you drop on the deck and you see them, their eyes glowing, red eyes and green eyes like, you know. Oh, queer things they were.
Mars once sent a big stern trawl of a Lunida out into deep water off the Irish coast back in 1976, deliberately looking to catch fish species which they might be able to land instead of the ones we're more used to seeing, as a potential way of keeping the boats working after the Cod War. But nobody, it seems, wanted to eat them. What do you remember about that?
Yeah, I don't know much about it. Like, I can remember there was a place, there's a place up off the northwest coast off the butt of Lewis, about 40 mile off, what they call Briley Bank. That was named after a ship called the Florence Briley, and she was sent trying the deep water, and she found ache there, and it was a regular fishing ground after that, and of course they don't fish there now, there's no trawler. But the ache ships used to fish there, Briley Bank, and used to get ache and olibots, small half-size olibots you used to get there, you know. But she found that place, a ship called the Florence Briley. She was running for T&T for Fleetwood.
I suppose the biggest thing to hit Fleetwood as a commercial fishing port was the final round of the Cod Wars. These actually started back in the 1950s and went on well into the 1970s. What are your recollections of that period in the town's history?
Oh, I remember a lot about them.
Go on.
Well, the first one, what we used to do, this is where the daymen come in handy. When you got out of dock and the second day, after they'd all got over the bad head like, the second day, they get the daymen out at breakfast and they get them on the deck, as long as the weather was okay, you know, and they get them out on the deck, and on the port side, the side you didn't use like, you know, from the gallus where the wire goes through, well, of course you didn't use them on the port side. But they still had gallus on, you know, from the olden days, like, you know, when they used to use two sides, like. And they used to rig a wire from gallus to gallus, from the fore, right at the forward end of the ship to the after end. and they used to rig a wire, and on that wire you had netting all laced along it and then to the rail, the ship's rail, so that when they used to try and board you, in those days, the gunboat, that they used to send a small boat, you know, a small motorboat on time, and they used to have this net so they couldn't get aboard, because the other part of the ship was too high for them, you know, the forward part and the after end. And you also had bags of coal. If you was a coal burner, had bags of coal and bags of spuds. And you used to be pelting them when they used, and the high-powered fire hose, you know, and they used to have this hose going over a big, and they used to be pelting them with pieces of coal and lumps of coal and all the potatoes and that, you know. Out they could lay their hands on, you know.
When they first kicked off in the 50s, the Territorial Exclusion zone was a lot smaller than it finally ended up, creeping that little bit more seaward with each new round.
It went from 3 to 12, see, and then it went from 12 to 24, and of course then it went out of ridiculous, like the 100 fathom line, like, you know.
Yeah.
And because you was miles off the side then, you couldn't work the west side, like, you know, out like that.
But you had the Royal Navy up there to protect you.
Yeah, well, we used to, what is it, because used to work what they call havens. You'd have a gunboat, our gunboat, and they had so many gunboats down there. One for the east side, and one for the west side, and one for the northwest side. And they're what they called havens, and that meant they patrolled a certain area where you could fish in. Of course, you get these high-speed Icelandic gunboats, and they was fast and all. And they get them coming in, towing this cutter, like, this wire cutter on the end of a wire, like cutting your watch. And what they used to do, used to get so many ships fishing, and the rest we used to be steaming around, you know, and try to get in the road, you know, of the gunboat, like. They say, here he comes, you know, and they used to, downtown, we don't used to be steaming, trying to get in his way, you know, so he couldn't get out of the ship, like, you know. But they still used to get out of him and cut the thing, like, you know.
Surely it must have been dangerous for the crews out on the deck to have a cut warp whiplashing back under the towing pressure of the boat.
Oh, yeah. But they didn't bother about it, the gunboat, like, they still did it.
And did any of them ever have a go at you?
No, never wanted it. Never got me.
No rammings or close encounters?
No.
I was over in Iceland in the mid-1990s at a place called Acrones, where the cutting gear was made, and actually tracked down one of the cutters they'd used. Surprisingly, it wasn't very big. It was kind of like an anchor with tightly angled flukes which had blades fitted to the inner edges. I also managed to take a look at the gunboats Odin and Thor in Reykjavik Harbour, which had done most of the cutting at that time.
There was one of the ships once that thought, well, I've had enough of it. He was a bit of a go-getter, like, you know. A Fleetwood lad, and he started towing a wire behind him. He started towing a wire behind him with so much weight on it to try and catch the gunboat's propeller. Oh, there was hell on about it. They wanted it, but they said, well, why? Why shouldn't we? So it was dangerous. What more dangerous than him? Like cutting the warp.
But in the end they got their way by threatening to close a very important NATO base if the trawlers were not kept outside their unilaterally declared 200-mile territorial fishing zone.
Oh, yeah, that's how it finished. Yeah.
So tell us a bit now about how all this affected commercial fishing in Britain, and more specifically Fleetwood as a fishing town.
Well, it just went down the Swanee, didn't it, down the river. And the funny part about it, this chap, the same chap what I'm talking about, what did that wire, he was in the fisheries in Fleetwood. He was in charge of them, the Fisheries Association. And he told me he used to take the Jacinta out as skipper anyway, the first one, like, you know. And he told me then, when the first time we went out, and they told me, because I'd sail with him as a skipper, and I'd also sail with him as a mate when he got going, you know. And he told me, he said that this scientist come over, he said he was a top bloke and all from Iceland. And he took it, of course he called Tommy, like, you know, and Tommy, you know who I'm talking about, Tommy Watson.
Tommy Watson, yeah.
and he took him round the dock, and he looked at it and said, and is this what we did to Fleetwood? Ah, the scientist. Yeah.
Yeah, just
he said it was real, what is it, you know, real put out about it. But that made no difference, did it? They did it.
And now it seems it's the European Union's fishery policy that's hammering those last few nails into commercial fishing's coffin. What, if anything, would you like to say about that?
What? Oh, don't start me up on that. I'll tell you. If I could get... I'll tell you what I've thoughts about that. If you could have been with me aboard the Jacinta, taking these people round, and I would say at least 80% of the people I took round and talking about the European Commission and European policy and all that, and you could have listened to them agreeing with me about the European Commission and policy that get out.
Who's responsible for the most damage to the fishing industry then? The Icelanders or the European Union?
Well, I think the European Commission did. Because originally, they first started off at that, at one time, at the end when they got the last Cod War, they did offer to, to let them catch a certain amount of fish. And they turned it down. Yeah. But I don't know a lot about that part, but I know that happened, that the Icelanders did offer them they could catch a certain amount of fish each year. Compared to what we used to catch, it was a small amount, and they turned them down.
So how do you now see the future of commercial fishing in the UK?
Your fish stocks are dropping, and your, well, according to the scientists and that, and your rules and regulations are going worse and worse, and more all the time. And that fishermen aren't getting a fair crack of the whip. They aren't, in my opinion. Going from bad to worse, they're just not giving them an inch. They won't give them an inch, they just keep on and going worse and worse all the time, less and less. They're trying to cut them down all the time. They want to be with me on the standby boats alongside the oil rigs. With a line and and we used to fill the deck with cod. There was that much cod around around the oil rig platforms.
With hindsight then, do you think that the Icelanders actually had the right idea, and that instead of opposing them, we should have done exactly the same thing and kept all our own fish to ourselves?
Oh yeah, in a way we should have done the same, yeah. Oh yeah. Once they did it, we should have done it.
So no hard feelings towards the Icelanders then?
Not really. Time melted it all. I had it one time, but, you know, it's gone now.
So looking back on it all now, despite the hardships and dangers, did you enjoy your years at sea?
To a certain extent, yeah. Worst time of all used to be when it was bad weather. And when I was on the deck, you know, man, when you're in the wheelhouse, you've got you've got the stress of the crew and that, like. But when you're hauling and shooting the ship, you know. But when I was mate, I was on the deck and you used to, hauling time, they used to come and call you out, you know, a pot of tea before hauling. And bad weather, like. And you used to be sat in the galley, having the fag light, all muffled up, pulled down tight as you can get at your hood, so no water can get in, muffle around your neck, you know, until that. Everywhere sealed up. And you used to sit there and just get out of your bunk, bleary-eyed, you know, and you used to think, what am I doing here? Oh, that's when it used to hit you. And you used to listen, you was listening for the telegraph ringing, because you can hear the big bell, you know, you'd hear the telegraph when they rung down slow speed. And you knew that was the last, what they call the short mark, the last 25 fathom coming in, before the doors come up. And that's when you used to have to be on the deck. But you'd hear the engine room telegraph going, out you used to go, and you'd say, oh Christ, here we go again. Oh, it used to be bad then.
But you got well paid for it.
At times you did. I don't know.
But when you take the sheer number of hours you spent away from home and out on the deck, then divide them into whatever it was you earned, the hourly rate was pitiful, especially considering the conditions. I don't think too many people these days will be queuing up for that type of work, recession and no recession.
No, not at all. Certainly wasn't the hours you used to put in, you know. Ooh.
And it was proper work as well.
Oh yeah. And especially when it was the winter time and you got the... I mean, I just happened to be mentioning about a chap. They was talking about a chap, my family the other day, and they're talking about this bloke, this coloured chap. He was decking in a ship called the Carina, and we're on the north coast of Iceland, and we come fast, and what they call the belly of the net was out, you know, was busted, and we had to start mending it. And as we were mending it, I felt it, you know, and I thought, hello. And I looked up, and you could see it coming along the water, the black frost. And it's just like fog, you know, and you see it move, slowly moving along, and I shouted like, you know, because I was mate there. I said, look out, here we go, the black frost. Get it laced up, you know, before it gets it. We had to go into Iceland the next day with 3 blokes. And this lad, we used to call him Homo. You read all that Homo, haven't you? The coloured lad.
Yeah.
Homo, we used to call him. Wash his white, you know. A pun-like, if you will. And his fingertips was froze. You know, he got frostbite. 3 of them did, and the boatswain got frostbite. But he was the worst of the lot. In fact, he had 3 fingertips took off, the boatswain. But the other 2, they got over it. But we're they're in the cabin where they sleep. And in the boat while we're steaming into Iceland, and the feeling started coming back into his fingertips, and the next minute he's rolling around the cabin. We're all in that boat getting out of the road. It was just like a Zulu warrior going, oh, my hand! When the feeling was coming back in his hands, you know. Oh, poor old Homo. And as I say, the boatswain, we had to leave him. 3 of his fingertips was taken off, and the others was alright, like, you know, like come back and all the fingertips go white, dead white, you know. And that's just, you know, working on the net, like. But it's bad, that black frost, it's bad. Just like a fog it is, you know, just coming over the water. That's about it, I think.
So there you have it. An unimaginably hard and dangerous life with no guarantee even of a payday after you're 3 weeks away from port. Something which hopefully will put the lives that most of us currently lead into some sort of perspective. So the next time you wake up in your nice warm comfy bed on a cold morning with a few sniffles and consider yourself too ill for work, or when recession hits and you have to tighten your belt a bit to maintain your nice comfortable lifestyle, remember that compared to what you could be doing instead, things aren't perhaps quite as bad as you might imagine, and that there are people out there even today in parts of sub-Saharan Africa, South America and Asia where even having a belt to tighten is an unaffordable luxury.